Oh, hello there, hurtling through the week. Anyway, not going to talk about the Sun or the BBC today. I want to talk about the influence of American money in British politics, pushing a very, very particular authoritarian agenda. Now, I think parents need to wake up for this. You'll see the relevance of that in just a little bit. Let's move on.
Programme. Anyway, we're going to be moving on to a very controversial topic, actually, and it's quite shocking what's happening in some of our schools. White pupils at a school in Haringey, that's a North London borough, have been excluded from extra literacy lessons where the focus will be on teaching Black history and culture. Schools will fund Saturday classes for children from Black heritage families only to accelerate progress in reading and writing whilst also developing the children's knowledge of Black history and culture. Parents were informed that no comparative course will be offered for white pupils or presumably any other ethnic group because, of course, North London is a very diverse area. It's not just black and white kids that will be going to these schools. So I want to get the thoughts of my panel on this one because I'm sure you've got some very strong views. Peter.
Right, just before we dive into your friend of mine, hi, I'm Peter Whittle. This young person is Emily Carver, who's become a regular presenter at GBNews. Now, before Emily was working for GBNews, she was working for GBNews and the Institute for Economic Affairs. The Institute for Economic Affairs are not actually based at Tufton Street, amazingly enough, but they are one of those right-wing groups that philosophically is exactly based at Tufton Street. They get their funding from somewhere, primarily American money, and this particular news story, you can see the arc whereby GBNews and other vested interest parties will drag in American libertarian concerns into a British story. You can disagree with the nature of this story, but I'm about to sort of give you some facts about this, which this particular segment, of course, doesn't. The British press were like the Mail and the Telegraph were jumping up and down over this because, of course, you see, the beauty of this story is that it proves that the real racists in the UK aren't the white racists. No, they're the black ones, which is the beauty of this story. Yes, anyway, let's dive in a bit more.
So you often talk on your own channel,
yes,
the New Culture Forum, about the toxicity of identity politics. Do you see this as, well, the logical conclusion of that ideology?
Yes, it absolutely is, or should be. Not the logical conclusion so much as one of the obvious results of it, actually. I don't mean to split hairs there. Look, I mean, the fact is we've got something happening here which is pure racism, right? That is white kids, who, by the way, do the worst in our education system, being excluded from classes, right, as a result, basically, which is what it is.
Right, just before he gets all ideological there. OK, that's hi, I'm Peter Whittle, who's based at 55 Tufton Street. We don't know where New Culture Forum funding comes from. They will claim that it comes from sales of their books, but they give away their books as PDFs, so it's very unlikely that that's the case. The New Culture Forum has recently received quite a lot of money, which has really upped their profile. I wonder where the money's come from. Now, I'm going to hazard a wild guess here, and I'm no doubt extremely wrong, but I'm guessing that the money has come from various US-based sources, so therefore Peter has had to include a lot of these kind of American concerns. What he's doing here is, in fact, very, very disingenuous because he drags in the white pupils do worst argument, which doesn't quite work for Haringey. Unfortunately, it might be nice if somebody could actually look up some of these facts, but doesn't quite work in Haringey. They don't in Haringey. So one might argue that initially the initial, "oh, this is so bad" stance perhaps isn't quite as clear-cut as it is. Anyway, let's see what his rationale for it is.
Of critical race theory, which is now being taught in schools far more widely than most people realise, right? It's probably illegal what's happening in this school, right? But you can be pretty sure nothing will be done about it.
Right, okay, thanks for the indignation, mister. Okay, yes, now critical race theory is something that came out of American universities, and it's been used as a kind of stick to beat people with. You'll never get told in this country exactly what it is. It is a particular way of looking at inequalities, particularly in critical race theory. It's about inequalities in legal outcomes. It isn't being taught in British schools, that is a downright lie, but it is an American concern, and therefore, well, that's the one we have to go with, isn't it, Peter? Because that's where the money comes from.
Right? This is pure discrimination. Pure discrimination. But it's based on a racist idea, which is critical race theory, which is that white people are inherently racist by virtue of being white, right? That is what is being taught in schools, right? Something like 60% of schools have either introduced this to kids or they've used outside bodies, who come in with the materials to teach it. It's just like the gender argument, it's the same thing.
Right, okay, and just to dive in there, we don't teach critical race theory in the UK. Groups that are always concerned about this are always fronted by people of a particular hue, like Peter here. And critical race theory is a way at degree level of looking at the world, but it's become a bogeyman. Okay, and this notion that if you teach certain groups of people history, which is what it is, it's going to be a bad thing. Don't forget that Peter is a man that really doesn't like anybody criticising anything about Britain's glorious past, okay? He's a man that basically weeps if you mention anything bad about Winston Churchill. He can't quite get his head round the fact that the British Empire was, maybe not brilliant. Anyway, let's oh, bless him, he's so out of his depth. Anyway, let's move on.
All I would say, Emily, is I really wish parents have got to wake up. They've got to wake up about what's happening in our schools, This is just one of the... I think we're going to see a lot more of this.
It's worth saying that this is a council initiative more than the schools per se choosing to do this. It's something that's been offered by the council on behalf of the Haringey Education Partnership, but it's quite extraordinary.
Right, and again, just to dive in there, yes, Haringey Education Partnership, yes, indeed. It was felt that by a group of schools, not run by the council, unfortunately, sorry, but that's the way the modern education system goes, that they needed to provide extra input and therefore bought in to this external body, charity, to buy from. Now, you can argue the toss about whether or not they should be buying from these particular people, but there is a definite need within the borough that they have identified, because, drum roll, they need to do the best for their kids. That's the way that particular one works. Yeah?
Any additional extra resources would be given, provided to students based on their ethnicity. I mean, there's so much to say about this. I mean, it's patronising for one thing, that it's only the black kids who need extra support. But what do you make of it,
It's also slightly confusing when they say, people of African or African heritage. I mean, where on earth does that end? Look, it's only just come out now because some parents have been complaining to Haringey.
Right, apologies for that there. This is Stephen Pound, who's an ex-Labour MP. Stephen Pound is a very tame Labour ex-MP. Nothing very much to say about him. He doesn't really contribute anything other than giving the notion that there might be another view in the room. There isn't. Yeah, anyway, just to go back to the central point about the racism involved here. Well, no, I'm sorry, guys, but there's a lot of racism on show. The fact that you get 3 white people in a room getting upset about something they don't know anything about tells you everything you need to know. This isn't a thing. Critical race theory isn't a thing. And what, I mean, you know, if you've seen any of my other videos about Hi, I'm Peter Whittle and the New Culture Forum, and indeed the rest of the crew at 55 Tufton Street, and yes, I'm going to include the Institute of Economic Affairs in that because basically they are, what you get from this is the notion that certain things need to be banned. Yeah, this is a legal argument about what they need to do. They've probably got their way with trans issues in schools. Hooray for that. Trans kids will simply be banned. Where they're going to go? Who cares? Because they'll become invisible. And also, these kind of things, remember, you know, the whole thing about having a education system where they can buy in materials as they want to, because after all, that's academies for you. They're private institutions and they should be allowed to do things. No, they mustn't. They must toe a very particular line. And if that involves, for example, additional inputs in and around black history, it's going to go. Yeah, parents need to wake up to this stuff. What parents are we talking about here? Are we talking about black parents? Probably not, are we? We're talking about the types of people, like the three people in the room here. That's the way this is. It's GB News distilled to its essence. Yes, there you go. It's not so much the blind leading the blind, it's more the willingly blind leading the willingly blind. I just find this stuff absolutely horrific, because you can guarantee that with the Tory party on the ropes, they will seize on things like this to pass new laws, because after all, that's what you and I understand best, is the foot forever stamping on our face. Anyway, have a lovely day.